Before we see if kindness can melt the Ice King, hit that subscribe button and like this video, and tell me in the comments. Do you think it's possible for someone to be brilliant in business but terrible at life? The Billionaire's Dinner Invitation. The headline from last month's prominent business magazine profile sat on Julian Vance's desk, glossy and bold. ***** Julian Vance. The Ice King of real estate. His vision. His empire. His unmatched ruthlessness. *****. He tossed it into the high-tech trash receptacle with a scoff. Sentimentality was for the weak. Efficiency was for winners. "You're late," Julian said coldly. Checking his platinum watch as Elena Castillo rushed into his expansive penthouse apartment, her usually immaculate appearance slightly disheveled. A stray strand of dark hair had escaped her neat bun, and there was a smudge of something near her collar. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Vance," Elena apologized, struggling to catch her breath, her voice quiet. "My brother, Matteo, needed a ride to his interview, and then my car wouldn't start this morning. The fundraiser is tonight, Elena." Julian cut her off with a dismissive wave, his focus already on the meticulous planning required for his social obligations. "Everything needs to be perfect." He gestured to the pile of freshly delivered designer shirts draped across his minimalist sofa. "I need these pressed immediately." Elena nodded quickly, her movements efficient despite her rush, and gathered the shirts, disappearing into the state-of-the-art laundry room without another word. Julian returned to his laptop, reviewing property valuations for his latest, most ambitious development project. Personal apologies and car troubles were irrelevant distractions in his world. "You know, you could ease up a bit, Alex," a voice called from the doorway of his home office. Julian's business partner and childhood friend, Daniel Roberts, emerged, adjusting his glasses, a look of mild disapproval on his face. "She's the best employee you have. Reliable, discreet, incredibly hardworking. Excellence shouldn't be praised," Julian replied without looking up from his screen, his tone flat. "It should be expected." Daniel dropped into the chair across from him, a long-suffering expression on his face. "This is why people call you the Ice King behind your back, you know? That, and never seeing you exhibit any emotion that isn't related to closing a deal." "They can call me whatever they want," Julian retorted, finally meeting his friend's gaze with his cold, sharp blue eyes. "As long as they sign the contracts." He leaned back, the picture of contained power. "Vance Group didn't become the fastest-growing real estate firm in the city because I coddle people. It got there because I demand perfection." "No, it got there because you're brilliant at business, Alex," Daniel conceded, a wry smile playing on his lips. "But you might be terrible at life." Julian rolled his eyes and returned to his work, dismissing the comment. At 34, he had amassed more wealth, power, and success than most people achieved in a lifetime. His penthouse apartment overlooked the entire city skyline, a glittering testament to his achievements. His collection of cars was the envy of enthusiasts, and his name appeared regularly on lists of the city's most eligible bachelors and most powerful figures. What more was there to life than building, conquering, acquiring? Later that afternoon, as Elena finished her tasks and prepared to leave, she hesitantly approached Julian's desk, clutching her purse strap nervously. "Mr. Vance?" she began, her voice quiet, a subtle tremor in it Julian hadn't noticed before. "I know this is unusual and you don't have to, of course, but I'm hosting a small dinner at my home this Saturday." Julian looked up, taken aback. An employee inviting him to their home? In his world, the lines between employer and staff were rigidly maintained, never crossed. "It's for my brother Matteo's birthday," Elena continued, her earnestness overcoming her nervousness. "He's a big admirer of your work, Mr. Vance. He's studying architecture. It would mean the world to him, to us, if you could possibly attend, just for a little while." Before Julian could form a polite, professional rejection, the kind he delivered effortlessly in business, Daniel, who had overheard from his office, strolled out and answered for him. "He'd be delighted," Daniel said, ignoring Julian's sharp glare. He clapped Julian lightly on the shoulder. "Wouldn't you, Alex? Sounds fascinating." What time should we arrive, Elena? Elena beamed, her entire face lighting up with a genuine, radiant smile Julian had never seen directed at him before. It was a startling, unexpected sight. 7 o'clock, Mr. Roberts. Oh, thank you. Both of you. I'll write down the address. She quickly scribbled it on a small notepad from Julian's desk. Nothing fancy, just good food and company. After she left, the usual quiet calm of the penthouse felt charged. Julian turned to Daniel, his voice low and sharp. Why would you do that? I don't socialize with my employees, Daniel. It's completely inappropriate. Because, Alex? Daniel replied, his tone serious, cutting through Julian's bluster. You need to remember there's a world outside these marble floors and stock portfolios. A world with real people, real connections. One dinner won't kill you. It's a massive boundary violation. Julian protested, his frustration rising. What's inappropriate? Daniel shot back, his voice unexpectedly sharp, a reminder of their shared past. Is how you've forgotten where you came from. Not everyone was born with a silver spoon. Alex. Including you. Julian flinched, the reminder of his humble origins. The past he'd meticulously erased from his official biography, landing with a surprising sting. He turned away, the brief discomfort unsettling him. That evening, Julian's phone rang as he reviewed the final proposal for the Riverside development. His most ambitious, potentially most profitable project yet. Vance, he answered curtly. His mind still partially on Elena's unexpected invitation and Daniel's frustrating honesty. Mr. Vance, it's Philip Barnes from the Community Development Board. Julian straightened, instantly shifting focus to the multi-million-dollar project. Philip, I trust you've reviewed our proposal. We believe it's the strongest, most financially sound option. That's why I'm calling, Mr. Vance. The board has made its decision. Philip's voice was formal, devoid of personal warmth. I regret to inform you that we've decided to go with Eleanor Sterling's proposal instead. Julian froze, the words like a punch to the gut. Eleanor Sterling, his fiercest competitor. Ruthless, cold, and rarely beaten. What? Why? Her vision included more community input and affordable housing options. Philip explained, a slight hesitation in his voice. The board felt it showed more heart. Julian hung up the phone, the click echoing in the silent penthouse. He stared out at the glittering city below, the view suddenly mocking him. Eleanor Sterling had beaten him. Despite his meticulous planning, his superior financial projections, his unmatched ruthlessness, he'd lost the biggest deal of the year because his proposal lacked heart. For the first time in years, doubt, cold and sharp, crept into his mind. What if Daniel was right? What if he had become too disconnected from the real world, from real people, from the very things that mattered outside of balance sheets? He looked down at his desk. Beside his laptop lay the small notepad, the simple address in Elena Castillo's neat handwriting. Saturday dinner at his maid's house suddenly seemed like more than an inappropriate obligation. Perhaps it was time to remember the world beyond his ivory tower. Perhaps it was time to see if the Ice King could find a little heart. Julian's sleek Aston Martin looked comically out of place among the weathered sedans and pickup trucks lining Elena's modest neighborhood streets. He double-checked the address, frowning slightly at the small, unassuming house with its neatly maintained but simple front yard. It was a stark contrast to the sprawling estates and high-rise luxury he was accustomed to. Remind me why we're here again, Julian muttered to Daniel as they walked up the short path to the front door, adjusting the lapels of his expensive jacket, feeling strangely exposed. Because you're trying to be a human being for once, Alex? Daniel replied, a hint of amusement in his voice, adjusting the bottle of wine he carried. And because I promised Elena we'd come. Julian straightened his Italian silk tie, feeling a prickle of nervousness, an unfamiliar sensation when approaching a social situation, as he knocked. The door swung open almost immediately, revealing Elena in a simple but elegant blue dress, her dark hair falling freely past her shoulders, a soft, natural look so different from her usual practical bun. Mr. Vance, you came? She said, her genuine surprise evident, her smile lighting up her entire face, a radiant warmth that seemed to fill the small space. "And Mr. Roberts, please come in." The modest home's interior was a world away from the minimalist, museum-like perfection of Julian's penthouse. Family photos covered nearly every wall, capturing moments of shared laughter and connection across generations. Colorful, well-worn throws draped the comfortable furniture, inviting relaxation. Delicious aromas, a blend of spices and roasting meats, filled the air, creating an immediate sense of warmth and welcome. The small living room buzzed with conversation as several people mingled, a lively, genuine energy that was both unfamiliar and, surprisingly, not unpleasant. "Let me introduce you," Elena said, guiding them through the room, a proud, happy host. "This is my brother, Matteo." A young man in his mid-20s, dressed neatly, jumped up from a sofa, extending his hand enthusiastically towards Julian. "Mr. Vance, it's an honor. I've studied all your development projects," Matteo said, his eyes bright with genuine interest. The Vance Tower's mixed-use design was revolutionary. Julian shook his hand, genuinely surprised by the young man's knowledge and obvious passion. "Thank you, Matteo. Are you in real estate as well?" "Architecture student," Matteo explained, beaming. "Just landed an internship at Ramirez Designs." "Solid firm." "Solid," Julian noted, impressed despite himself, seeing the same drive and ambition he valued, but coupled with a warmth he rarely encountered. Elena continued the introductions, leading them around the room. "My cousins, Sophia and Carlos, my Aunt Maria." They were greeted with polite curiosity and warm smiles. "And," Elena said, approaching an elderly woman seated in an armchair by the window, the matriarch surveying the scene with sharp, assessing eyes. "My grandmother, Abuela Sophia." The elderly woman's shrewd eyes assessed Julian without pretense, cutting straight through his facade. She said something in accented English, her gaze direct. "So, this is your boss, Elena? The one who makes you work so hard?" "Abuela," Elena warned gently, her cheeks flushing slightly. "It's fine, Elena," Julian said, suppressing a smile, genuinely amused by the old woman's directness and lack of filter. It was refreshing. "It's a pleasure to meet you, ma'am." As Elena excused herself to check on the dinner preparations in the kitchen, Julian found himself surrounded by her family, fielding questions about real estate trends, urban development, and the future of the city. Surprisingly, he didn't mind. Their genuine interest lacked the usual hidden agenda, the calculated networking, the subtle vying for advantage he encountered at every business function. They were simply curious, open, and welcoming. Daniel caught his eye from across the room, raising his glass with a knowing smile that seemed to say, "See? I told you." Feeling a pull of curiosity, or perhaps a subtle guilt about being the guest of honor while others worked, Julian excused himself from the living room and stepped into the kitchen, offering to help. The space was small but filled with the most incredible aromas. Elena stood stirring something that smelled divine on the stove, while Abuela Sophia sat at a small table beside her, expertly chopping vegetables. "Can I get you anything, Mr. Montgomery?" Elena asked, turning with a surprised smile, still using his formal name despite the setting. "Julian," he corrected gently, the sound of his own name in this warm, domestic space feeling oddly foreign. "And no, I just wanted to see if you needed any help, or just wanted to escape the crowd for a moment." Abuela Sophia said something in rapid Spanish, her tone direct, making Elena's cheeks flush instantly. Elena quickly replied in Spanish, her voice low, a hint of exasperation mixed with affection. Julian, unbeknownst to them, understood enough conversational Spanish from various business dealings and travel to catch the gist, especially when spoken slowly and clearly. Abuela Sophia, not realizing her words were being partially comprehended, continued, her voice gentle but firm, clearly scolding Elena. "You spent all your savings on this dinner, child?" the older woman said in accented English, shaking her head slightly. "For your boss. The money for your restaurant." Julian froze. His stomach plummeted. All her savings? The money for her restaurant? It's an investment, abuela, Elena whispered back in English, glancing nervously towards Julian, hoping he hadn't understood. Mr. Vance knows everyone in the restaurant business. One good word from him, one connection, it could change everything. It could be worth it. Julian felt an unfamiliar, sickening twist in his stomach. It wasn't just a thoughtful dinner. It wasn't just about her brother's birthday. The elaborate, multi-course feast Elena had prepared, the warmth, the effort. It suddenly took on a new, profound, and heartbreaking meaning. She hadn't invited him because he was Mateo's idol, not primarily. She had invited him, spent her last savings, hoped to leverage her connection to her ruthless boss, all for the chance to advance her own desperate dream. A dream he hadn't even known existed until that moment. Guilt, sharp and unexpected, pierced through his calculated composure. Dinner was served family-style at a table crowded with platters piled high with fragrant rice, grilled meats, colorful vegetables, salsas that promised a kick, warm tortillas. Julian found himself seated between Mateo and Aunt Maria, who immediately began heaping food onto his plate with cheerful insistence. "You're too skinny," she declared in English, her tone warm and maternal. "All work, no food. Not good." Throughout the meal, the family shared stories, a tapestry woven with threads of their journey from Mexico, their struggles and triumphs building a new life in the city. Mateo spoke with raw emotion of their father's death 5 years earlier, and how Elena, barely out of her teens herself, had put her own dreams on hold, working tirelessly to help raise him and Laura, to keep their family afloat. "She could have been a top chef already," Mateo said proudly, looking at his sister with profound admiration. Even back then, everyone said she had a gift in the kitchen. But family comes first for her. Always. For the first time in years, sitting amongst people who spoke so openly of sacrifice and resilience, Julian thought about his own humble beginnings, the parts of his biography he'd carefully scrubbed from his company website, presenting himself as a self-made man, but omitting the poverty, the losses, the sheer grind it took to climb out. He had worked hard, yes, but had he ever sacrificed his deepest dreams for someone else? Had he ever put family truly, unequivocally first? The warmth of the room, the genuine connection of the family, contrasted starkly with the calculated world he inhabited. When Elena, blushing slightly, brought out the flan for dessert, golden, shimmering, clearly homemade, Julian decided to address what he had overheard, unable to let it pass. "This meal was extraordinary, Elena," he said, his voice more formal than the relaxed atmosphere, causing the table to fall quiet, everyone looking at him. "You have a remarkable talent, a true gift." He looked at her directly, his gaze softer than usual. I understand you hope to open a restaurant someday?" Elena's cheeks flushed a deeper red, her eyes widening slightly in surprise that he knew. Yes, it's my dream. It's called Casa Castillo. Traditional family recipes with my own modern twist. A place where everyone feels welcome, like eating at home." She hesitated, her voice quieter now, vulnerable. "I've been saving for years, but still have a long way to go." "Like tonight," Julian said softly, the words carrying a weight that went beyond a simple compliment, acknowledging the incredible effort, the sacrifice. Later that evening, as Julian and Daniel prepared to leave, feeling perhaps a little too full, and certainly more emotionally resonant than they had arrived, Elena approached Julian, holding out a small container wrapped in foil. "Leftovers," she explained with a shy smile, looking down at the container. "Abuela made sure there was plenty. No one should eat takeout every night." She paused, then added softly, her eyes meeting his for a brief second, a quiet joke that only they would fully appreciate, even millionaires. The simple, thoughtful gesture of kindness struck Julian deeply. It wasn't part of a business transaction. It was pure, unexpected human generosity. No one had ever shown concern about how he ate or lived in years. His carefully constructed walls, designed to keep him safe, felt suddenly fragile, easily breached by a woman's genuine warmth and a container of food. "Thank you," he said, the words carrying more weight than usual, looking at her, seeing not his maid, not a hopeful entrepreneur, but a remarkable woman. For everything. Driving back towards the city, the bright lights of the skyline growing larger ahead of them, Daniel waited until they were halfway there before speaking. "So?" he asked, breaking the long silence. "Not so terrible, was it? Dining with the common folk." Julian watched the city lights, a place he ruled, but that suddenly felt less compelling than a small, warm house. It was unexpected. Unexpected. Daniel chuckled, a knowing sound. "You mean you didn't expect actual human connection? You didn't expect people to be nice?" Julian didn't answer, but the container of leftovers sat warm on his lap, a small, fragrant reminder of an evening that had somehow shifted something fundamental within him. The Ice King felt a thaw. Monday morning, Julian sat at his desk, staring at the empty container that had held Elena's leftovers. The meal had been better than anything from his usual rotation of five-star deliveries. The taste, the warmth, the feeling behind it. It lingered. When Elena arrived for work, dressed in her uniform, gathering her cleaning supplies, he called her into his office. "Isabella," he began formally, using her employee name, trying to maintain a professional distance despite the warmth he felt. "I wanted to thank you again for dinner Saturday. It was truly exceptional." Elena set down her cleaning cart, looking surprised by the formal summons and the topic. "You're welcome, Mr. Montgomery." "Julian," he corrected gently, a small smile touching his lips, "especially when we're discussing business." He paused, leaning forward slightly. "I've been thinking about your restaurant concept, Casa Castillo, and your talent. You have a remarkable gift." Elena's eyes widened, a flicker of surprise, then hope. "You have?" "Yes." Julian nodded. "Tell me more about your vision. What type of location are you looking for? Your timeline? Funding plans?" Hesitantly at first, then with growing enthusiasm as his genuine interest became apparent. Elena shared her dream. She had been saving for 5 years, had taken business courses at community college, had a clear concept for Casa Castillo, the menu, the atmosphere, the feeling of home she wanted to create. "I've saved almost half of what I need for the initial costs," she explained, her voice filled with quiet determination. "Another year or two, maybe, and I might have enough to start looking for a small location." Julian nodded thoughtfully, taking notes, impressed by her planning and dedication despite the limited resources. "Would you mind if I look into a few properties? Just to give you some ideas." Elena's eyes widened further, almost disbelieving. "That would be amazing, Mr. Vance. I don't even know where to begin with finding commercial real estate." "Julian," he corrected again, his voice soft, "especially when we're discussing business. Or anything that matters." He paused, a subtle shift in his tone, before returning to the professional. "Think about it. Send me your location parameters if you have any." After she left, Julian called Daniel. "I need you to look into available restaurant properties in up-and-coming neighborhoods. Charm, character, reasonable size. For a new investment?" Daniel asked, surprised. "Something like that," Julian replied, a rare, genuine smile on his face. Over the following weeks, Julian found himself noticing things about Elena he'd overlooked before. Her quiet determination, the way she hummed softly while working, her thoughtfulness in remembering exactly how he liked his coffee without being reminded. He began making small, subtle changes to ease her workload in the penthouse, tidying up before leaving for work, making sure things were put away so her cleaning was simpler, actually using the coasters for his drinks. He even started leaving notes sometimes, simple thank yous for a job well done. The professional boundary was still there, but it felt softer now, edged with a mutual respect and a growing, unspoken awareness. Julian found himself looking forward to her arrival in the mornings, a quiet anchor in his otherwise relentless schedule. One morning, he caught himself smiling, a full, genuine smile, just when he heard her key in the lock. "You're in a good mood, Mr. Vance," she commented, hanging up her jacket, surprised by his uncharacteristic expression. "I found a property yesterday that might interest you, Elena," he replied, sidestepping her comment, the excitement of potentially helping her dream overriding his usual formality. "Great corner location, good foot traffic, recently renovated kitchen. It has character." Elena's face lit up, her eyes shining with hope, then clouded with realistic assessment. "That sounds perfect, Mr. Vance, but I'm sure it's way out of my price range." "Not necessarily," Julian said, a hint of something complex in his voice. "The owner owes me a favor. A big one." He handed her the listing details. "Think about it. It could be the one for Casa Castillo." That evening, Daniel stopped by Julian's penthouse with takeout, finding Julian poring over restaurant business plans and architectural layouts. "I haven't seen you this interested in someone or something since college," Daniel remarked, watching him, a knowing smirk on his face. "It's not like that," Julian insisted, closing his laptop, feeling a familiar prickle of defensiveness. "I'm helping a promising entrepreneur. Nothing more. It's a smart business opportunity." "Right?" Daniel drawled, his smirk widening. "That's why you asked me about her favorite flowers yesterday. Market research, I assume." "Market research," Julian muttered unconvincingly, his cheeks flushing slightly. He stood up, moving to the window, looking out at the city lights. "Look, Daniel, she's incredibly talented, dedicated. She deserves a shot. This is a legitimate investment." "I get that, Alex," Daniel said, his tone serious now. "And it's great that you're doing it. But you realize she works for you, right? There are power dynamics to consider here. Your feelings, her potential feelings. It's complicated." Julian frowned. "I'm well aware, Daniel. That's why I'm being careful. This is strictly professional." He repeated the words, as if trying to convince himself as much as Daniel. The next day, Julian overheard Elena on the phone in the hallway outside his office, confirming her evening shift at Carlito's restaurant. He paused, confused. Hadn't the job here given her enough? Later, he called her into his office, the conversation weighing on him. "Elena," he began, his voice softer than usual. I overheard you mentioning a second job? At Carlito's?" Elena's gaze dropped slightly, a hint of embarrassment on her face. "Oh, yes, Mr. Vance. I took a second job waiting tables. In the evenings, to increase my savings. For the restaurant." Something tightened in Julian's chest, a complex mix of concern and a realization he wasn't ready to name. "Elena, that's unnecessary. You're already working full-time here. Your salary should be enough to—" "Dreams don't fund themselves completely, Mr. Vance," she said with a small, weary smile that tore at him. "And my family still needs the support. Until Abuela is fully recovered, until Mateo finishes school." That night, Julian couldn't sleep. The thought of Elena exhausting herself between two jobs, tirelessly pursuing a dream while still caring for her family, bothered him more than any missed profit margin ever could. He paced his penthouse, the vast space feeling empty, cold. He realized then, his feelings for her had grown beyond professional interest, beyond admiration for her talent. He cared about her, deeply, and he wanted to help her achieve her dream, not just as an investor, but as someone who believed in her. After a week of discreet searching, Julian found the perfect location for Casa Castillo. A charming corner space in a vibrant neighborhood with great foot traffic, reasonable rent, and a 5-year lease option with renewal. He prepared lease papers with incredibly favorable terms, planning to surprise Elena with the opportunity, a chance to make her dream a reality much sooner than she ever thought possible. When she mentioned her day off the following Tuesday, Julian decided. It was time. He would visit her home, present the proposal, and perhaps finally articulate the feelings he could no longer ignore. That Tuesday evening, Julian parked his car a block away from Elena's house, the proposal folder tucked securely under his arm, his heart inexplicably racing. He had never felt nervous about a business proposition before, not even the multi-billion-dollar deals that defined his career. But this wasn't just business. As he approached the door, he heard familiar voices inside. Elena was laughing, a warm, genuine sound that made him smile, a sound he cherished hearing. But then another voice responded, one that sent a sudden, cold wave through him, freezing him mid-step. "Isabella, darling, you have such talent. I'm telling you, Casa Reyes would be perfect as the anchor restaurant for my new development." Eleanor Sterling, his fiercest business rival. The woman who had stolen his biggest deal with a proposal that had more heart. What was she doing here? Talking about Casa Castillo? Julian knocked sharply, the sound cutting through the domestic warmth, his mind racing with a sudden, terrifying suspicion. When Elena opened the door, her smile of welcome faltered instantly at the look on his face. "Mr. Vance, what a surprise!" she began, confused. Behind her, standing near the sofa, a champagne glass in hand, was Eleanor Sterling. Elegant, composed, and utterly out of place. Well, Alexander Montgomery." Eleanor's voice was smooth, a veiled challenge in her tone. Using his old name, acknowledging their rivalry even in this setting. Small world, isn't it? Julian's mind raced, connecting disjointed pieces with horrifying speed. The dinner, the questions about his business approach. Elena's sudden, almost immediate interest in restaurant properties after that night. Eleanor's proposal having heart. It all clicked into place, making a sickening, terrible kind of sense. "I need to speak with you, Elena," he said coldly, his voice devoid of the warmth it had held just moments before. Privately, Elena, bewildered and hurt by his sudden shift, led him to the small backyard, the contrast between his icy demeanor and the cozy space jarring. "What's wrong, Julian? Why are you here? What's happened?" "I could ask you the same about Eleanor Sterling," he snapped, unable to contain the sudden eruption of pain and perceived betrayal. "What is she doing here? Talking about your restaurant?" He looked at her, his gaze hard, accusing. "Was this all a setup, Elena? Get close to me, pretend to be interested, extract information, pass it to my competitor." Elena's eyes widened in genuine shock, her confusion absolute. "What? No. Julian, what are you talking about?" She shook her head vehemently. "Victoria is my cousin. I had no idea you two even knew each other until tonight." "Your cousin?" Julian's voice dripped with disbelief, the idea seeming too convenient, too perfect a coincidence to be real. "The woman who just stole the biggest development deal of my career happens to be your cousin, and you never thought to mention it? Not even when you asked me to help you with your restaurant dream." "Why would I?" Elena fired back, hurt by his accusation, her own voice rising. "I'm just your maid, Julian. I don't discuss my family connections with my employer." She stopped, immediately looking regretful for the defensive outburst, the stark reminder of the hierarchy between them. "I'm sorry, but Victoria reached out recently after hearing about my cooking from relatives. She tasted my food at a family gathering. She had no idea I worked for you until tonight, when I mentioned where I got the idea to ask about commercial properties." Julian shook his head, the proposal folder hanging limply at his side. The beautiful package containing her dream now felt like a cruel prop in a play he hadn't known he was cast in. Everything felt like a carefully orchestrated joke at his expense. His carefully nurtured belief in her, in the connection they shared, shattered into 1,000 pieces. "I trusted you," he said quietly, the raw pain in his voice a stark contrast to his usual controlled demeanor. "Julian, please, it's not what you think," Elena pleaded, reaching a hand towards him. "Don't come back to work, Elena." He cut her off, his voice cold and final, rebuilding his walls higher and faster than ever before. "I'll have your final check mailed." As he stormed back towards his car, fueled by pain, anger, and a renewed, bitter cynicism, he heard Elena calling after him, his name sharp with distress, but he didn't turn around. The fragile thing that had been growing between them, the tentative hope, the thawing of the Ice King, had just shattered into 1,000 pieces. That Tuesday evening, Julian parked his car a block away from Elena's house, the proposal folder tucked securely under his arm, his heart inexplicably racing. He had never felt nervous about a business proposition before, not even the multi-billion-dollar deals that defined his career. But this wasn't just business. As he approached the door, he heard familiar voices inside. Elena was laughing, a warm, genuine sound that made him smile, a sound he cherished hearing. But then another voice responded, one that sent a sudden, cold wave through him, freezing him mid-step. "Isabella, darling, you have such talent. I'm telling you, Casa Reyes would be perfect as the anchor restaurant for my new development." Eleanor Sterling, his fiercest business rival. The woman who had stolen his biggest deal with a proposal that had more heart. What was she doing here? Talking about Casa Castillo? Julian knocked sharply, the sound cutting through the domestic warmth, his mind racing with a sudden, terrifying suspicion. When Elena opened the door, her smile of welcome faltered instantly at the look on his face. "Mr. Vance, what a surprise," she began, confused. Behind her, standing near the sofa, a champagne glass in hand, was Eleanor Sterling. Elegant, composed, and utterly out of place. Well, Alexander Montgomery." Eleanor's voice was smooth, a veiled challenge in her tone. Using his old name, acknowledging their rivalry even in this setting. Small world, isn't it? Julian's mind raced, connecting disjointed pieces with horrifying speed. The dinner, the questions about his business approach. Elena's sudden, almost immediate interest in restaurant properties after that night. Eleanor's proposal having heart. It all clicked into place, making a sickening, terrible kind of sense. "I need to speak with you, Elena," he said coldly, his voice devoid of the warmth it had held just moments before. Privately, Elena, bewildered and hurt by his sudden shift, led him to the small backyard, the contrast between his icy demeanor and the cozy space jarring. "What's wrong, Julian? Why are you here? What's happened?" "I could ask you the same about Eleanor Sterling," he snapped, unable to contain the sudden eruption of pain and perceived betrayal. "What is she doing here? Talking about your restaurant?" He looked at her, his gaze hard, accusing. "Was this all a setup, Elena? Get close to me, pretend to be interested, extract information, pass it to my competitor." Elena's eyes widened in genuine shock, her confusion absolute. "What? No. Julian, what are you talking about?" She shook her head vehemently. "Victoria is my cousin. I had no idea you two even knew each other until tonight." "Your cousin?" Julian's voice dripped with disbelief, the idea seeming too convenient, too perfect a coincidence to be real. "The woman who just stole the biggest development deal of my career happens to be your cousin, and you never thought to mention it? Not even when you asked me to help you with your restaurant dream." "Why would I?" Elena fired back, hurt by his accusation, her own voice rising. "I'm just your maid, Julian. I don't discuss my family connections with my employer." She stopped, immediately looking regretful for the defensive outburst, the stark reminder of the hierarchy between them. "I'm sorry, but Victoria reached out recently after hearing about my cooking from relatives. She tasted my food at a family gathering. She had no idea I worked for you until tonight, when I mentioned where I got the idea to ask about commercial properties." Julian shook his head, the proposal folder hanging limply at his side. The beautiful package containing her dream now felt like a cruel prop in a play he hadn't known he was cast in. Everything felt like a carefully orchestrated joke at his expense. His carefully nurtured belief in her, in the connection they shared, shattered into 1,000 pieces. "I trusted you," he said quietly, the raw pain in his voice a stark contrast to his usual controlled demeanor. "Julian, please, it's not what you think," Elena pleaded, reaching a hand towards him. "Don't come back to work, Elena." He cut her off, his voice cold and final, rebuilding his walls higher and faster than ever before. "I'll have your final check mailed." As he stormed back towards his car, fueled by pain, anger, and a renewed, bitter cynicism, he heard Elena calling after him, his name sharp with distress, but he didn't turn around. The fragile thing that had been growing between them, the tentative hope, the thawing of the Ice King, had just shattered into 1,000 pieces. The next morning, Julian reverted to his coldest, most distant self. He called his assistant, Sarah, before Elena's usual arrival time. "Sarah, I need you to find a new housekeeping service immediately," he ordered, his voice clipped and devoid of emotion. "And when Elena Castillo arrives, inform her that her services are no longer required. Have her final check ready." "Is there a problem with her work, Mr. Vance?" Sarah asked, surprised. Elena was known for her reliability. "Just do it, Sarah," Julian snapped, hanging up before she could ask anything else. When Daniel arrived at the office later that day, he found Julian obsessively reviewing Eleanor Sterling's previous development projects, a storm brewing behind his eyes. "You're in early, Alex," Daniel commented cautiously, sensing the tension. "Everything okay?" "Elena Castillo is Eleanor Sterling's cousin," Julian said without looking up from his screen, the words hard, flat with conviction. "I found them having a cozy little meeting at her house last night." Daniel sat down, digesting the information. "Okay, and, Julian finally looked up, his eyes blazing with incredulous pain. "Eleanor just stole the Riverside project from us. Daniel, the biggest deal of my career. Elena has been working in my home for 2 years with access to everything. She probably fed Eleanor information the entire time. Alex, that's a pretty serious accusation," Daniel pointed out gently, seeing the raw hurt beneath the anger. "Based on one family dinner?" "The dinner was part of it," Julian said bitterly, slamming a hand on his desk. "Getting close to me, making me think," he trailed off, shaking his head, unable to articulate the brief, fragile hope she had built, the way she had made him feel. "It doesn't matter. She's gone." "You fired her?" Daniel asked, disbelief in his voice. "Without even letting her explain? Without hearing her side?" "There's nothing to explain," Julian retorted, turning back to his computer, rebuilding his walls at lightning speed. "The connection is undeniable. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to develop a strategy to counter Eleanor's next move. I won't let her win again." For the next few weeks, Julian threw himself into work with a vengeance, determined to outbid Eleanor on her next major project, to prove his ruthlessness was superior to her heart. He worked late, slept little, and snapped at anyone who crossed his path. The penthouse, once maintained to perfection by Elena, gradually fell into disarray despite the new cleaning service. Felt sterile, cold, empty, just the way he liked it, or the way he told himself he liked it. One evening, Daniel found Julian staring at the empty container that had held Elena's leftovers, still sitting on his kitchen counter weeks later. "Have you tried calling her?" Daniel asked quietly, a note of concern in his voice. "Why would I?" Julian responded, tossing the container into the trash with unnecessary force. "Because you're miserable, Alex," Daniel observed, seeing the truth in his friend's haunted eyes. "And I bet she is too." Julian ignored him, immersing himself back in spreadsheets. But later that night, alone in the silent penthouse, he found himself looking at Elena's number in his phone. His thumb hovered over it, the memory of her smile, her warmth, the taste of her food warring with the cold conviction of her betrayal. He threw the phone aside in frustration, the internal battle raging. Meanwhile, Elena was indeed miserable. The abrupt, cold termination had left her not only without her primary income, plunging her and her family back into financial uncertainty, but heartbroken and utterly bewildered. She replayed Julian's cruel accusations in her mind, the pain of his distrust deeper than any financial hardship. Despite Eleanor's continued offers to help fund her restaurant dream, my development could use Casa Castillo as its centerpiece restaurant. Elena couldn't bring herself to move forward with the plan. "I don't understand, cousin," Eleanor said during another visit, genuinely puzzled. "This is your dream. Why are you hesitating?" "It wouldn't feel right," Elena admitted. The thought of working with Eleanor, of building something Julian had offered to help with, feeling like a betrayal of the connection they'd shared. This is about Montgomery Vance, isn't it? Eleanor sighed, shrewdly assessing her cousin. I had no idea you two were close. We weren't, Elena insisted, the lie feeling hollow. Then, more softly, her voice thick with sorrow, we aren't. Eleanor studied her face. You have feelings for him, Elena. Elena didn't answer directly, the pain in her eyes confirmation enough. He thinks I betrayed him, she said, her voice raw. That I used my position to spy for you. That I set him up. That's ridiculous, Eleanor exclaimed, genuinely surprised by the accusation leveled against Elena. I didn't even know you worked for him until you mentioned it that night. The board's decision had nothing to do with you. It doesn't matter now, Victoria, Elena said, wiping away a tear, the injustice still stinging. He believes what he wants to believe. It's over. As weeks turned to a month, both Julian and Elena settled into their separate lives of quiet unhappiness. Elena found another housekeeping position and continued her evening shifts at Carlito's, the familiar grind and numbing comfort. Julian buried himself in work, the cold, isolated world of the Ice King, his chosen prison, ignoring Daniel's concerned glances and pointed remarks. One evening, while reviewing property listings for an upcoming project, Julian stumbled upon something that stopped him cold. On Eleanor Sterling's development website, a sleek, modern building was advertised, and its cornerstone feature was a restaurant, named Casa Castillo. The grand opening was scheduled for the following month. The betrayal felt even deeper now. Elena had moved forward with Eleanor's offer after all. The warmth, the family, the dream. It had all been a performance, a means to an end. Julian was drafting an angry, icy email to his legal team, ready to unleash hell on Eleanor for using the name and concept, and on Elena for her perceived deceit, when Daniel walked in. Don't send that, Alex, Daniel warned, looking over his shoulder at the screen, sensing the familiar, dangerous rage radiating from his friend. She's using Elena's restaurant concept as the centerpiece of her development. Julian fumed, slamming his laptop shut, the fury a shield against the renewed pain. After everything I did to help, after she spent her last savings on that dinner, did you actually help? Daniel interrupted, his tone sharp, cutting through Julian's self-pity. Or did you just make promises before storming off in a jealous rage? Julian glared at him, the accusation hitting home harder than Daniel intended. I'm not jealous. I'm angry at being manipulated, used. Then you'll be interested to know what I learned from Matteo today, Daniel said casually, his expression unreadable. Julian's breath hitched.
Matteo.
Elena's brother. He tried to look uninterested, but his body stiffened. You're in contact with her brother? Someone had to check on the family after you torpedoed their primary income with your firing, Daniel replied sharply, not pulling any punches. They were struggling, Alex. And guess what? Daniel paused, letting the words sink in. Elena turned down Eleanor's offer. Flat out refused. Julian stared at him, utterly stunned. But the website,
Casa Castillo?
Eleanor's moving forward with the name and concept anyway, hoping to force Elena's hand, Daniel explained. Hoping the publicity will corner her. But Elena refused to be involved. Refused to sell the name or her recipes. She wants nothing to do with it. Daniel crossed his arms, his gaze steady on Julian. She also refused several other legitimate restaurant offers that came her way after the initial buzz about her cooking. Care to guess why? Julian swallowed hard. The truth, raw and painful, beginning to dawn. He hadn't been manipulated by Elena. He'd been blinded by his own deep-seated distrust, his own fear of being used, his own pride. I need to know the truth, Daniel. Was I wrong about her? Spectacularly wrong, Alex, Daniel confirmed, his voice softer now, seeing the dawning shame in his friend's eyes. Eleanor approached Elena after the dinner at her house, having heard about her culinary talents from mutual relatives. Elena had no idea about the business rivalry between you two, And she turned down Victoria's offer after you fired her. After you accused her. After you broke whatever fragile thing you had. Julian felt ashamed. Profoundly, sickeningly ashamed. He had destroyed her job, accused her of betrayal, when all along she was protecting her integrity, turning down her own dream being realized by his rival because, "Why would she do that, Daniel?" he whispered, voicing the core question. "Why turn down her dream, especially after I?" "Figure it out, genius," Daniel replied, heading for the door, leaving Julian alone with the devastating truth. It wasn't about the restaurant opportunity for her anymore. Left alone in the silent office, surrounded by the symbols of his ruthless success, Julian stared at the angry email draft, then deleted it. He opened his desk drawer and pulled out the proposal folder he'd prepared for Elena, the one containing the plans for Casa Castillo, the one he never got to show her. For the first time in his adult life, Alexander Julian Montgomery Vance had no idea what to do next. But he knew one thing for certain. He needed to see Elena again, even if only to apologize for being so completely, utterly wrong. Julian stood outside Elena's house, the rain soaking through his expensive suit, feeling utterly out of place, utterly vulnerable. He'd been there for 10 minutes, pacing, rehearsing what to say, gathering a courage he never knew he needed. Not the courage for a business negotiation, but the courage for humility, for admitting fault. Finally, he knocked. When Elena opened the door, surprise and deep hurt flashed across her face, quickly masked by a weary caution. "Julian," she said, her voice flat. "5 minutes," he pleaded, his voice hoarse, raw with emotion, the words tumbling out. "Elena, please, that's all I ask. Just 5 minutes." She hesitated, her gaze searching his face, seeing the unfamiliar desperation there. Then, slowly, she stepped aside, letting him enter the small home that now felt like hallowed ground. The house was quiet, lacking the bustling energy of the birthday party. "Everyone's at the hospital with Abuela," Elena explained, noticing his glance around the room, her voice low. "She hasn't been feeling well. We had to take her in." A fresh wave of shame washed over Julian. He was here, focused on his own need for forgiveness, while her family was in crisis. "I'm so sorry to hear that, Elena," he said sincerely, meaning it more than any other apology he'd ever offered. "I hope she's okay." An awkward silence fell between them, heavy with unspoken accusations and lingering pain. Elena crossed her arms, a protective barrier, waiting, her gaze steady. "Your 5 minutes are ticking, Julian," she reminded him quietly, a hint of her old resilience showing through her hurt. Julian ran a hand through his wet hair, struggling to find the words. I saw the Casa Castillo listing on Eleanor's development website," he began, needing to clear the air, needing her to know he knew. "I had nothing to do with that," Elena replied quickly, sensing the implication, her voice sharp with immediate defense. "She's using my name and concept without my permission. I haven't agreed to anything." "I know," Julian said, relief washing over him, relief that she was innocent, relief that Daniel was right. "Daniel told me. He also told me you turned down other offers." Elena's expression softened slightly at the mention of Daniel, a brief flicker of gratitude. "James has been checking on Mateo. He's been kind. Unlike me," Julian acknowledged, facing his own failure, the truth bitter on his tongue. He took a deep, shaky breath, the hardest words still ahead.
Elena.
"I came to apologize. I was wrong. About everything. About you. You accused me of betraying you," she said, her voice tight with emotion, the memory of his cruel words clearly still raw. "Of using you. Of being just like everyone else in your world." "I know," Julian said, his voice raw now, facing the pain he had caused. "And I am so sorry. I jumped to conclusions because—" He stopped, searching for the right words, the real explanation that went beyond Daniel's facts. "The truth is, no one had ever done something so thoughtful for me in years. That dinner, Elena, it wasn't just food. It meant something to me. cracked through everything. He looked into her eyes, his own filled with regret. When I saw Victoria there, with the proposal, I convinced myself it couldn't be genuine, that you must have had an angle. It fit the narrative I'd built about the world, about people. Elena listened quietly, her arms still crossed protectively, her expression a complex mix of hurt, confusion, and dawning understanding. I've spent my adult life building walls, Julian continued, the confession spilling out, raw and honest. My childhood taught me to distrust kindness, to see ulterior motives everywhere, especially when money was involved. After my parents died, after everything, I had nothing. I worked my way up from nothing, and I promised myself I'd never be vulnerable again, never be dependent, never be hurt like that. So you push people away? Elena observed softly, her gaze gentle despite her pain. Before they can hurt you, before they can even get close. Yes, he admitted, nodding. But with you, it was different, Elena. Somewhere between your dinner invitation and your leftover containers, I started feeling things I couldn't control. Connection. For the first time in years, I found myself looking forward to seeing someone, hearing their voice, making them smile. A tear slipped down Elena's cheek, a silent acknowledgement of the truth in his words. Why didn't you just talk to me, Julian? She asked, her voice thick with emotion. Ask me about Victoria? Tell me you were worried. Because I'm an idiot, Elena, Julian replied, a self-deprecating, broken laugh escaping him. A terrified, prideful idiot who fell in love with you, and then ruined everything because I was too afraid to believe someone could genuinely care about me. Scar and all. Isabella's eyes widened at his confession, the depth of feeling in his voice undeniable. You fell in love with me? Julian stepped closer, closing the small distance between them, his voice low, earnest. I did, Elena. I do. I love you. He met her gaze, his own filled with vulnerability and hope, acknowledging the pain he'd caused. And I understand. If you never want to see me again after how I treated you, after what I accused you of. But I needed you to know the truth. My truth. Elena was silent for a long moment, struggling with her own swirling emotions, the pain of his accusation, the relief of his apology, the shock of his confession, the memory of her own feelings for him. Victoria is my cousin, she said softly, revisiting the moment that shattered everything. We weren't close growing up, but she reached out after tasting my food at a family gathering. She had no idea I worked for you until I mentioned it that night. I know that now, Elena, Julian said gently. Daniel filled me in on everything. And you believe him, she said, a flash of the old hurt returning to her eyes. But you couldn't believe me. I wasn't ready to hear it then, Elena, Julian admitted, facing the ugly truth of his own distrust. I was hurt and confused and reacting from a place of old pain. But I'm listening now, and I believe you, completely. Isabella's expression softened again, the pain receding, replaced by a quiet, hopeful vulnerability. I turned down Victoria's offer, she said softly, the sacrifice feeling less heavy now that he knew, because it didn't feel right. Not just the opportunity itself, but because, she hesitated, her gaze meeting his, because I couldn't bear to see you again, and have you think I'd chosen her over you. Hope, bright and fierce, flared in Julian's chest. Does that mean, Elena? He asked, his voice trembling slightly, daring to hope. Does that mean you might have feelings for me too? Before Isabella could answer, the front door burst open. Matteo rushed in, soaking wet and out of breath, his face pale with panic. Isabella, he called frantically. It's Abuela. She's had a stroke. They've admitted her to intensive care. Isabella's face drained of color, the sudden crisis eclipsing everything else. How bad, Matteo? The doctor says she's stable, but she needs surgery, Matteo explained, his voice shaking, then noticed Julian. Oh, Mr. Vance, I didn't know you were here. Julian snapped into action, his business mind, trained for crisis management, taking over, but now fueled by a fierce concern that had nothing to do with profit. "What hospital?" he asked, stepping forward, taking charge naturally. "I'll drive you both. Get her things." During the tense car ride, Julian learned that Abuela Sophia's condition would require specialized care, extensive treatment, and a lengthy hospital stay. As they arrived at the hospital, the cold, sterile environment a stark contrast to the warmth of Elena's home. He overheard Matteo whispering to Elena, his voice filled with worry. "How are we going to pay for this, Isabella? Our insurance won't cover everything." Isabella squeezed her brother's hand, her face pale but resolute. "We'll figure it out, Matteo. We always do." As they hurried towards the entrance, Julian reached for Elena's arm, stopping her gently. "Elena," he said, his voice low, urgent, needing to help, to contribute, to show he was there. "Let me help. With the medical expenses." Elena stopped short, her expression hardening with familiar pride, her hand instinctively going to her purse. "We don't need charity, Julian." "It's not charity," he insisted, meeting her gaze, trying to convey the depth of his sincerity, the shift in his perspective. It's friendship, or whatever we are to each other now." Elena's eyes filled with determination, her pride warring with the overwhelming reality of Abuela's situation. "I appreciate the offer, Julian, truly, but we'll manage. We always have." Julian watched her walk away, following her into the hospital, a knot of frustration and admiration in his chest. His money, the thing he'd always relied on to solve problems, was useless in the face of her fierce independence. He realized that if he truly loved Elena, he needed to find a way to help that honored her pride, that met her as an equal, as a partner. He just had to figure out what that looked like. 3 days after Abuela Sophia's stroke, Julian returned to the hospital, a folder tucked under his arm. He found Elena in the waiting room, exhaustion evident on her face, but her eyes still held a spark of quiet determination. "How is she?" he asked gently, sitting beside her, offering a calming presence. Elena looked up, surprised but not unwelcomed by his presence. "Stable. The surgery went well, but recovery will take months. It's a long road." "And how are you?" Julian asked, noticing the dark circles under her eyes, the tension in her shoulders. "Hanging in there," she replied, a small, weary smile touching her lips. "The hospital bills are starting to come in, though. It's overwhelming." Julian nodded, understanding the unspoken concern, the immense pressure she was under. "I've been thinking about that, and I'd like to propose something." He met her gaze, his voice serious. "But I want you to hear me out completely before responding."
No interruptions, okay?
Elena eyed him warily, recalling his previous abrupt departures, but nodded. "All right." Julian opened the folder. "This is the restaurant proposal I was bringing to your house that night." He slid the lease papers for the perfect corner location across the table, the architectural renderings of Casa Castillo. "Not charity, Elena. A business partnership." Elena's eyes widened as she looked at the documents, her dream laid out before her. "I'd provide the business expertise and investment capital," Julian explained, his voice firm, professional, but underscored with genuine belief. "You'd bring your culinary vision, your talent, and your management skills. We'd be equal partners, splitting profits 50-50. He leaned forward slightly, emphasizing the core of the offer. "The restaurant would be entirely your concept, your menu, your rules. I'd be a silent partner unless you needed my input." "And what does this have to do with Abuela's medical bills?" Elena asked carefully, still wary, searching for the angle. "The partnership would include a signing bonus," Julian replied, his voice gentle, meeting her directness with his own. "Enough to cover Abuela's medical expenses and provide a cushion for your family during her recovery. It's not charity, Elena. It's an advance against future profits. A loan that will be repaid through the success of your restaurant." Elena studied his face, searching for any hidden motives, any sign of the Ice King, any hint of the man who had accused her. She found none. Only sincerity, respect, and a deep-seated belief in her. Why would you do this, Julian? After everything. Because I believe in your talent. Elena, Julian said sincerely, his voice unwavering. And because I was wrong before, spectacularly wrong. I misjudged you completely, and I want to make it right. Not just with words. He reached for her hand, covering it with his. This offer stands regardless of anything else between us, Elena. Even if you never want to see me outside of business meetings, I still believe Casa Castillo should exist. And you are the only one who can make it happen. Elena was quiet for a long moment, contemplating the proposal. It was generous, smart, and respected her independence. It was everything she could have dreamed of for Casa Castillo, and it solved the immediate, overwhelming crisis facing her family. It's a generous offer, Julian. It's a smart investment, Elena, he corrected gently, a small, knowing smile on his face. One that respects your independence while allowing me to help in a way that matters. Take all the time you need to think about it. As he stood to leave, ready to give her space, Elena called after him, her voice soft, hesitant. Julian. He looked back hopefully, his heart daring to beat a little faster. About what you said at my house, she began, her gaze meeting his vulnerable. About having feelings for me. She hesitated, then, quietly, she finished, I have them too. Feelings, understanding bloomed in Julian's eyes, quickly followed by a surge of profound emotion. Elena, but right now, she continued, her voice thick with emotion. With everything happening with Abuela, family comes first. I understand, Julian said quickly, nodding, a deep respect for her priorities evident in his voice. Always, family comes first. The simple acknowledgement, so different from his previous self-centered perspective, brought a warm, genuine smile to Elena's face. Thank you, Julian, she whispered. The next morning, Julian was surprised to find Elena waiting outside his office door when he arrived. I've thought about your proposal, she said without preamble, her expression resolute. I'll accept on one condition. Name it, Julian replied immediately, his heart pounding with anticipation. We expand the vision. Elena met his gaze, her eyes shining with renewed purpose. Not just one Casa Castillo, Julian, but eventually, a collection of family-style establishments that honor my heritage, that provide employment opportunities for my community. A place where hard work is seen and kindness is valued. Julian grinned, a wide, genuine smile that transformed his face. I was thinking too small. He extended his hand formally. Is that a yes, partner? Elena asked, a hint of her old sparkle returning to her eyes. It's a definite yes, Julian confirmed, taking her hand. But instead of a simple handshake, Elena surprised him by stepping forward and embracing him. Partners, she agreed softly, the word meaning so much more than just business. Over the following months, as Abuela Sofia recovered, slowly gaining strength, and the restaurant plans developed, Alexander and Elena's relationship deepened far beyond their business partnership. Julian became a regular at family dinners. Mateo started interning at Vance Group, seeing the genuine respect Julian had for his sister, and Daniel teased Julian relentlessly about his transformation. Ah, you're actually smiling at work, Alex? Daniel observed one day, watching Julian interact warmly with Elena. It's unsettling. I'm happy, Daniel, Julian admitted simply, shrugging off the Ice King persona that no longer fit. Is that so strange? For the Ice King? Absolutely, Daniel laughed. But I like this version of you better. As Casa Castillo's opening approached, Julian found himself increasingly involved in Elena's life, and she in his. She helped redesign his sterile penthouse into a warm, welcoming space, adding color, texture, and family photos. He supported her through Abuela's recovery, attending hospital appointments with her, and navigated the stressful pre-opening phase of the restaurant together. One evening, as they finalized the menu in Julian's now cozy living room, Elena looked up from her notes, a question in her eyes. I just realized something, she said with wonder in her voice. You never actually said why you came to my house that night. The night you found Victoria there. Before you saw her. Why were you there? Julian set down his wineglass, the memory bittersweet. I wanted to surprise you, he confessed, his voice soft. With the restaurant proposal, I had the papers all ready. But I also wanted to tell you how I felt about you. That I had fallen in love with your kindness, your determination, your incredible strength. The woman who put her family first, who wasn't afraid to work hard, who wasn't defined by her circumstances. Isabella's eyes softened, her hand reaching across the sofa to cover his. And now, Julian moved closer to her on the sofa, taking her hand, his gaze filled with love. Now I love you even more, Helena, for your forgiveness, your grace under pressure, your unwavering pride, your unwillingness to take my charity. Elena laughed softly, a genuine, warm sound. That last one drove you crazy, didn't it? It did, he admitted, grinning. But it also taught me something important, that the best partnerships, in business and in life, are built on mutual respect and equality, on seeing and valuing the other person for who they are. Speaking of partnerships, Elena said, gathering her courage, her gaze meeting his with playful seriousness. I was thinking that after the restaurant opens, maybe we could explore our personal partnership more officially. Julian's heart raced, the simple question holding the promise of everything. What exactly are you proposing, Miss Castillo? He asked, his voice low, filled with hopeful anticipation. That maybe, she replied with a smile, her eyes shining. The millionaire and his former maid could write their own unlikely love story. Together, she squeezed his hand. If he's interested. Julian's answer was a gentle kiss that promised a future neither of them could have fully imagined when she first knocked on his door with dinner leftovers in hand, or when he first saw her graceful defiance in a busy diner. 1 year later, Casa Castillo celebrated its grand opening. The restaurant embodied the best of both worlds, Elena's warmth, her culinary heritage, the feeling of home she created, combined with Julian's business acumen and support. The lines stretched around the block, with food critics, local celebrities, and curious neighbors all eager for a taste. The guest of honor was Abuela Sofia, fully recovered and beaming with pride from the best table in the house, surrounded by family and accepting compliments from everyone who passed by. Welcome to Casa Castillo, Elena said, her voice strong and confident, standing before the assembled guests, Julian by her side. 1 year ago, this restaurant was just a dream. Today, thanks to hard work, faith, and the support of everyone here, and especially to my partner, in business and in life. Her eyes found Julian's in the crowd, and the love between them was palpable. That dream has become reality. Dreams don't always unfold as we expect, Elena continued, her hand finding Julian's as he joined her, their fingers intertwining. Sometimes they take detours that lead us to something even more beautiful than we ever imagined. Daniel raised his glass in a toast from the crowd, a proud smile on his face. To 2 unlikely partnerships. Eleanor Sterling, now a friend and unexpected supporter rather than rival, added, and to the power of a home-cooked meal. The celebration continued into the evening, the restaurant filled with laughter, music, and the irresistible aromas of Elena's signature dishes. As the night went on, Julian quietly took Elena's hand and led her away from the celebratory crowd. There's something I want to show you, he said mysteriously, guiding her toward a hidden staircase at the back of the restaurant. Where are we going? Elena asked, intrigued. You'll see, Julian replied with a smile. He led her up the stairs and opened a door to reveal a stunning rooftop garden he'd secretly added to the building plans during construction. String lights twinkled overhead, and raised beds were filled with herbs and vegetables. All the fresh, fragrant ingredients Elena loved to cook with. Julian, she gasped, utterly surprised, her eyes wide. It's beautiful. When did you do this? It was supposed to be ready for opening night, he explained, his voice soft. But I wanted it to be perfect. Now you can grow your own ingredients. Right here. Elena walked through the garden in wonder, touching the fragrant herbs, admiring the view of the city she now helped feed with her talent. When she turned back to Julian, she found him on one knee, a small velvet box in his hand. Elena Castillo, he began, his voice tender, filled with profound love and gratitude. You walked into my sterile world with warmth and kindness, and you taught me that true wealth isn't measured in property portfolios or bank accounts. It's found in moments of genuine connection, in the strength of family, and in having the courage to let someone see the real you. Tears filled Elena's eyes as she nodded, unable to speak, her heart overflowing. 1 year ago, Julian continued, his voice thick with emotion, I was a very different man, alone, closed off, and miserable behind my wealth. You changed everything. You showed me what really matters. You showed me what whole feels like. He opened the box, revealing the simple silver band engraved with that word. Elena, will you marry me? Yes, Elena whispered, her voice thick with emotion, extending her trembling hand. Yes, Julian, I will. As they embraced under the twinkling lights of the rooftop garden, sealing their promise with a kiss, Julian reflected on how everything had indeed changed. The millionaire who once measured success in dollars and dominance had found something infinitely more valuable, a love built on respect, understanding, vulnerability, and the simple, profound generosity of a dinner invitation that may have cost someone their last savings, but gave him his first true taste of real happiness and belonging. Below them, Casa Castillo buzzed with life, a symbol of their partnership. Mateo chatted animatedly with Daniel about architectural plans for the second Casa Castillo location. Abuela Sofia held court at her table, telling stories about Elena's childhood cooking experiments. Eleanor Sterling, now a friend and business ally, discussed partnership opportunities with Elena's cousins for future restaurant sites. And above it all, on a rooftop garden filled with life and promise, a millionaire and his former maid began the next chapter of their unexpected love story, living proof that when hearts truly connect, everything changes. And that's the story of Julian and Elena, a journey from wealth and isolation to love, partnership, and finding whole. It's a reminder that the most valuable things in life are often found in the most unexpected places, offered by the most unexpected people. If this story touched your heart, made you tear up, or simply reminded you of the power of kindness, vulnerability, and building something real together, please give it a like, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and comment your favorite part below. Don't forget to subscribe to soul-stirring stories for more unforgettable tales of love, resilience, and unexpected connections. Thank you for being part of our community. We'll see you in the next one for another story that touches the heart.